Hello everyone, welcome to 3ddesignacademy.com. In this lesson, we will continue with part 2 of the Ferrari design project review. So in the previous lesson, I spent some time fixing up the upper, so I think I'm going to go ahead and move on to different areas of the car, especially the body side and the front fender. So before I do anything though, let me just go ahead and turn the symmetry off over here, and I'm also going to just trim this out just because it's bothering me over here. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to project over here like this. I'm just going to go ahead and trim it like that. And since I'm done with it, I'm just going to go ahead and delete the construction history over here. And let's look at this fillet over here. So I did turn on the CV structure. Now the highlight in the structure is actually not too bad. However, the CV structure can use a little bit of improvement. As you can see over here, it's going like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and first of all, delete the construction history over here, and I'm just going to go ahead and hide this over here. So I'm just going to say hide, and let's look at the underlying structure. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim over here, and I'm going to go ahead and trim this one. Actually, the theoretical looks pretty good. Now, if the theoretical is good, the surface created for that is also going to be good. As you can see over here, the theoretical line flows nicely. Even though the CV structure of the fillet is not exactly ideal, I think it's actually doing pretty well. All right, that's our word. Let's go ahead and fix it up a little bit so that the surface or the fillet itself is a little bit better. So I'm just going to delete all the COSs that was previously there. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a surface fillet. It's going to chord, it's going to G2. I can't quite remember what size this was. Now this is actually really small. It would have been nice if the model was made in full size, because right now this is, I think, probably like 1/10 of what it's supposed to be, but that's okay. Alright, so it looks like it's about 20 mils there, so let me just go ahead and hide those, and I'm just going to grab a surface fillet over here, and let's go ahead and do 20, and let's see how that does. So I'm just going to make sure that the direction of the fillet is good, auto is good. Now, that said, however, it looks like even with the surface fillet, it does have a little bit of a structure issue. I mean, it's not horrible, it's a little bit better than before, but it's not exactly great. Now, one of the reasons why this is doing that is because, as you can see over here, this surface has a lot of curvature. So let me just undo this. So as you can see, it's got a lot of volume. So that's automatically going to curl the surface inboard quite a bit. All right. Now, that said, however, let me see if I can create it using other options. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using G2 chord, I'm going to see if I can just do a build theoretical and see if that makes it any better. I think the CV structure on this one is a little bit better. Now, that's however, because it is actually going over, you probably want to, well, reduce the size a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it maybe 18. I probably want to retain a little bit of the surface under there, so I'm just going to say default over here for now, like this, and well, let's leave that to auto. Okay, so if that's okay, so it looks like it's missing a little bit, so I'm just going to say extend, and I'm just going to reduce it by one more, so let's do 16 like this, maybe a little bit more, 16.5. Okay, so that's a little bit better. Okay, so as you can see, it's a multi-span surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can just do a Bezier. Bezier, it's not bad, but it's not exactly great. Now, the creator of this model did have a surface going all the way through. Actually, let me just see this. Now, if you have a surface like this, what you can do is you don't want to terminate it like this over here, because the surface CV structure is a little bit weird. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to patch this in. Now, instead of having multi-span surface, I'm going to see if I can just turn Bezier off, and let's see if I can just do default, and well, still multi-span surface, so let's try to reduce that. Actually, you know what? Let's do Bezier on this one. Still splits into two, which is kind of annoying, but that's okay. All right, so I'm going to try and clean this up. So I'm just going to use a line over here like this, and I am actually, you know what? Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but that's okay. Sorry. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to stretch this back over here because, well, technically this part is blocked in, so you don't really need surface all the way there. So if your footprint is limited from here to here, of course, that is going to allow you to reduce the number of spans. So I'm just going to go ahead and align this one. Position influence, I'm going to crank it up to max. And let's see what else. I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And looks like the CV structure is following somewhat nicely. And I'm just going to reduce the spans like this. And as you can see, I was able to achieve curvature with single span. Now this one over here, I am going to say partial because I don't want the CV structure to go all the way through there, which is going to be a little bit weird. Yeah, that's actually not too bad. So what I'm going to do is, right now you'll see that there's a zigzag, so I'm just going to clean that up using square. So I'm going to say grab square, it's going to be 1 is going to be curvature, 3 is going to be curvature, and I'm going to just pick the exact same surface in order to clean that up. And as you can see, that gives me a nice CV structure, which is much better than before. And because I'm actually aligning curvature to the existing fillet, it actually is going to achieve curvature onto the surface that it was connecting to. So if I grab surface continue to over here, it's still curvature here and still curvature here. Okay, so now comes the question of how do I block this in? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to untrim this piece over here. And I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now, when you're tackling a area like this, there are probably a couple of options. If you want to reduce the patch count, what you can do is you can probably just extend this over here and just have this patched in like this. However, because this is actually ending in a triangle, you can try to probably just patch this in one go. Now, one of the options that you can do is you can just, I guess the most natural path of surface is just to have something like this and just to trim both ends. But of course, if you have a design edge that you want to retain as much as possible, I'll show you how to do that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to extend this COS over here like this. I'm just going to extend it like this. And as you can see, we got 4 edges. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now you can use a square to fill that in. So I'm going to say it's going to 1 over here, 2 over here, 3 here, and 4 here. Now, of course, it is going to, right now my continuity is a little bit off. So I'm just going to turn that off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set to the curvature. Because, well, as you can see, it does have to be smooth because it's essentially a continuation of the fillet. And of course, this side has to be curvature too. So I'm going to say 1 is going to be curvature, but looks like it's doing that. It's got a lot of span. So what I'm going to do is turn on explicit control, and it's going to be 5 and 5. Okay, but let's take a look at this. So I'm just going to do 1 over here, and it does look like it is a pretty decent effect over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the number of CVs over here. And the reason why I'm doing that is because this is a position row, this is a tangent row, and this is a curvature row, which means that these rows of CVs are affected by the continuity over here. Same thing over here. This one is position, tangent, and curvature. Now, if you look at these 4 CVs, they absolutely have no effect on any of the surfaces, which means that they're just free floating. So you have to control them also, because as you can see over here, it's doing a little dip over here. If I were to just turn this off, it's nice and natural. But if I were to do curvature on this one, you'll see that this goes up a little bit. So now, highlighted is actually pretty decent, so you can probably leave it like that. But if you wanted a little bit more CV control, here's what I suggest. If you want to leave it at degree 5, I do suggest playing around with the boundary blend, depending on which side. Well, it doesn't look like it's doing much. One other thing you can do is you can also reduce the number of degrees like this. And what this does is it limits the number of CVs that are free floating. As you can see, there is no CVs that's not affected by some kind of continuity. The only problem is, of course, because it is degree 3, it's failing position here, failing curvature here, and failing curvature here. Now, if this was the case, what you can do is just leave it like this and delete the construction history and crank it back up to degree 5. And what that does is it actually has a really nice linear CV structure flowing all the way through and refit all the continuity after the fact. So right now it looks like it's failing. Oh, actually that's tangent. So it looks like it's a failing tangency over here. It's probably failing position over here. So let's go ahead and fix that. So first of all, I'm just going to fit position over here like that. Looks like not a lot of CV movement, which is good. And let's go ahead and make sure that this is curvature like that. That's good. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get curvature here. Now this one is going to be a little bit difficult. So let's see. Now, of course, if I do edge, it's going to go like this, which means it's failing position here and failing position here. Although I'm not sure why it's failing position here, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do is instead, I'm going to use the vector like this. Oh, and what do you know? I got curvature on both sides. And that's wonderful. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the construction history over here, much cleaner than before. So let's just go ahead and trim this one over here, and I'm going to trim. Oh, actually, I believe this is already trimmed. Okay, so if you look at the before, not only did I reduce the patch count, the CV structure is a lot better, and I don't have a weird twisting surface over here. So let me just go take a look at this. It's much more controlled. It retains the edge, highlights very nicely, and that's how you improve the body side. Okay, so now that's done. Let's go ahead and move on to the fender. Now, before I do the fender, let me just show you a picture. So if you look at this, I believe this is supposed to be smooth. And now creating a fender is always a very difficult task. But let's go ahead and work on this. So if you look at this, the fender is smooth over here. It's cut off like this. But if you look at this, I think there might be a little bit too much volume on the surface, and I don't like the peak over here. Now, one of the things that you probably want to do is if you have a fender piece like this, you probably don't want to have a sharp edge like this. That usually creates a little bit of CV structure problem, and it's not exactly the best when you're trying to fillet it. So unless you have a specific design line that's going like this, I suggest trying to open it up a little bit. So let me go ahead and do that. Now, another thing I'm going to do is if you look at the CV structure over here, you'll see that there's a little bit of volume here. So it's creating a little bit of bump on the CV structure. Now, it's not, highlight's not bad, but when it comes to surfacing, this is probably not the best practice. So I'm going to fix it a little bit. But before I do that though, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, I don't see any reason why this is divided into two pieces. Because I think the reason why this is like this is because the creator of this model tried to curvature align on this side, which is fine. But I believe I can do a little bit better and just make it out on one. So let's do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snap a curve over here, or actually duplicate it. Let's see, I don't know why there's a, oh, there we go. Actually, if there's one surface there, I don't know why. Okay, so you know what? I'm just going to dig through the curves. So he did have one curve. Yeah, so why don't we just use that? Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste and bring it over to the default layer, hide everything else. So if you have one curve, I suggest you use it. Now, that's not how I don't usually, I would say probably this is probably not best practice. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it degree 2. Now, there is going to be a little bit of discrepancy. I say that's totally fine too. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide these over here. And actually, I'm going to hide this one also. But before I do that, let me just create get a curve. Let's see, degree 3, yep. And I'm just going to put it over here. I'm just going to duplicate this one over here. You know what? Actually, let's make it out of degree 2 like this. I think that's good. And of course, I do need a volume here, but well, let's see. I'm going to just use a biroll first and see how that does. Okay, so it's going to be 1, 2, and 3 over here. And I really don't know why, but Autodesk really has to fix this. But you'll see that the surface just ends over here, and you have to click rebuild so that it goes all the way through. Which is it's not kind of annoying, it's actually really annoying. Alright, so I'm just going to turn on curve segments on like this, and I'm just going to put it over here. Right away, actually the CV structure is not that great. To be honest, I don't know why it's doing this. Because I feel like it should be a lot more consistent, but that's okay. I'll try to fix that. But as you can see, well, actually, I do think it's a little bit too flat. That probably is what the design calls for, but, well, actually, let's take a look at the picture. But as you can see over here, now, I know that the rear 3/4 view and the side view makes it really slim, but if you look at the front 3/4 view, it's actually rising up a little bit, which is probably the volume that the designer of this original sketch intended. So I would actually, if that was the case, I would actually raise it up a little bit. And that's probably going to have a pretty, I don't think it's going to detract from the design and the model. So I'm just going to do that and give it a little volume. And while the CV structure is a little bit still wonky, however, I do think that the volume over here is actually not too bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this edge over here, like this. I'm going to get rid of this one. And let's just rebuild it using a square. So it's going to 1, 2, 3, and 4, like this. And of course, I do want this to be degree 5. This one, on the other hand, I think I can reduce it. Now, this one, I don't know if it's because it's a square, but looks like it's a little bit biased towards the outboard side. So what you can probably do is just use the boundary blend. Maybe not. That's really weird. Well, if that's the case, you can always slide it over here. So let me just slide this CV over here. Actually, let's take a look at the volume as well. So I'm just going to bring this one over here. Slide it onto this side, and I'm going to slide this onto this side like this so that the CV structure is a little bit more even. Now this does mean you have to realign all of these, but as you can see, you get a lot more, I guess, a balanced CV structure, which you probably are looking, you want to achieve when you're modeling. Okay, now I'm just going to zoom in over here. Let me just turn this off, and I'm just going to bring it down. Oops. Let's grab the CV like this. Actually, that brought down the volume quite a bit. So maybe that's not the best. Okay, well, let me just go ahead and hide it. You know what? Let's just retain it like this. However, if you want a straight edge, what you can do is you can just bring it down like that and use either a boundary blend. Let's actually turn up the CV structure. Or you can just manually increase the volume. Maybe something like that. Now it doesn't turn into degree 3, which is fine. I don't know why Square automatically does that, even with the explicit control, but well, it does what it does. So yeah, I think that's much better. I think having a little volume towards the inboard side is good. So now let's go ahead and fill this in. So I'm just going to go ahead and hide this piece over here. And let's just use a square. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Looks like our edge is missing somewhere. Oh, looks like that's it. So I'm just going to use a stretch tool to snap it over here. And do that again. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh, is it missing over here too? Yes, it is. Okay, stretch here. Okay, so hopefully this time it'll work. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, like this. Okay, so this time I am going to set the boundary blend to back to, well, basically reset it. And this one, let's turn the explicit control. Oh, okay. So it looks like I do need an explicit control. Okay, so degree 4 there. I think that's good. Try to clean up as much as possible. And let's just look at the volume of the piece over here. That looks pretty good. I'll probably, just because, well, there's a little bit negative here. I think that's probably due to the CV direction over here. So if you were to actually do a rebuild like this, then actually, well, let's do rebuild over here. That negative should subside a little bit. As you, actually, yeah, well, yes and no. I guess it's really up to you if you want to keep it that way, or if you want to just do a rebuild like this. CV structure, having a CV structure like this versus this one, where it's creating a little bit sharper angle, probably helps. However, I am also going to reduce this to degree 2, just to keep it simple. However, it looks like after reducing to degree 2, it's a little bit biased towards the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to balance it by just bringing it down a little bit, like that, and that's going to create a little bit more even CV structure. Now that does mean you do have to do a rebuild, but well, that's part of alias. So yeah, that's not too bad. Okay, so now let's go ahead and actually connect the two. Now I do think reducing the volume over here is going to help. But well, let's put a fillet there and see how it does. I do think that it's got a little bit of too much peak over here. Well, let's see what happens if I put a fillet there. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to use build theoretical. And the reason why I do that is, well, let's give it a go first. So if I were to do 10, as you can see, because it's actually merging, these two surfaces are merging towards a flat, essentially, well, not exactly flat, but a single edge, which means that this one is actually becoming curvature as it approaches this one. So if you just do a regular fillet with cord, you'll see that it doesn't really recognize it that well and just does, well, what it does over here. So in this case, what you want to do is you want to, let's see, set it to instead either existing theoretical or build theoretical. But since I already have a theoretical here, I'm going to use existing theoretical like this. And as you can see, it gives me a much better result. And now I'm just going to say edge align over here. And okay, so here comes the dilemma. So if you look at the edge over here, now in order to finish this kind of a condition, there are two options. You can either patch it with a square and retain the edge, or you can just extend it and trim it out. Or of course you can do an edge align, which actually I would prefer to do, but of course that does mean you would have to do something over here. Now in order to retain the design as much as possible, let's do this. First of all, I think I'm going to make the fillet a little bit bigger just so that it has a smoother transition. And I'm just going to retain the edge over here. So I'm going to say default, and I'm just going to patch this in. Now, if you patch this in, the surface, especially if you have a big difference between the angle of this one, and and it's creating quite a strong peak over here, it is going to do a little bit of flick towards the end, or a little bit of potato chipping, but I'll show you that in a little bit. All right, that's it. However, I think I would actually prefer connect ends just because this edge is a little bit too small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say connect, modify range. Where is the manipulator? It's supposed to pop out, but looks like it's not. But that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Well, there are two options. You can either extend it back. The only problem with extending one side is it does have a little bit of effect on the CV structure. So what I actually prefer to do is just do a trim convert. So I'm just going to snap a curve here. I'm going to snap a curve here to make this patch a little bit bigger. I'm just going to project like this. And I'm going to just do a trim convert like that. And of course, that creates a little bit better structure. I can just delete that. Now with the trim convert though, you got to be a little bit careful because sometimes the curvature continuity does get messed up. So you just want to check. Well, in this case, it didn't. However, sometimes you want to make sure that it's actually curvature. So I'm just going to go ahead and align. And well, it looks like there's a little shift. I think I'm just going to leave it as position influence as 0. Just so that I can, well, I don't have to mess with anything else. All right, so now that's done. I'm just going to go ahead and delete the construction history over here. I'm just going to go ahead and do a square. It's going to be 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to pick the curve over here, 4. Okay, so I'm just going to set it to 5 and 5. Of course, 1 has to be curvature and 4 has to be curvature. Of course, with this one, you'll see that because I'm trying to make a square and align to existing edges, there's going to be a little flick. And because it's actually 5 degrees, you'll see that while these 4 CVs are floating by itself. Like I said, over here, you want to modify them, control them a little bit. So you can use a boundary blend like this, which is a little bit better. But, well, not really. Oh, yeah, actually, not really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can reduce the number of degrees. Not this one, but this way. Okay, it still retained the curvature. And it still retained curvature here too. So despite my initial worry, this was actually really easy to do. So curvature there, and that's perfect. So if you see this one, actually this one is actually not that bad. I'm kind of surprised. So you'll see that it is actually a little bit of potato chipping over here, but that actually looks pretty good. So yeah, I'll take that as a win. All right. So I think I'm going to stop here for part 2. And in the next one, I'm going to show you guys how to remodify this one. And I'll probably do a little bit of modification on this one too. Because of this modification here, there's a gap, which means that all of these surfaces have to be readjusted. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that in part 3. All right, so that is it for part 2 of the Ferrari design project review. Thank you guys for watching and see you next time. Want to learn more? Then become a member at 3ddesignacademy.com, where you will find hundreds of video tutorials ranging from basics, including curve creations, intermediate level tutorials such as this wheel, all the way to Class A modeling of the interior car exterior. Interested? Visit 3ddesignacademy.com.